My 8th grade civics teacher regularly reminded us of the 3 distinct but related branches of the United States government. The executive branch led by the president, the legislative branch led by the Congress, and the judicial branch led by the Supreme Court. Each branch has its own duties, and those duties provide checks and balances to ensure that the other branches function within the proper limits of their power. The judicial branch is the most fascinating, in my opinion. The leaders of the executive and legislative branches have term limits. An individual can only serve as the president, a senator, or a congressperson for so long before that person has to submit again to the electoral process. However, when a person is appointed to the Supreme Court, she or he sits on the high court for life. Across U.S. history, a Supreme Court justice has typically served longer than a commander-in-chief. This might explain the custom of Supreme Court justices administering the oath of office to the President of the United States. The most recent administration of the oath of office was both historic and humorous. On January 20, 2009, with throngs of people on the Washington Mall and millions watching on TV and online, Chief Justice John Roberts gave the oath of office to President Barack Obama, the first African-American president in United States history. In the heat of the moment, on that cold winter morning, the Chief Justice incorrectly recited a part of the oath. President Obama, being a constitutional lawyer, tried to help the Chief Justice. But in the final analysis, the administering of the oath was neither elegant nor accurate. Consequently, the Chief Justice privately administered the oath to the President the next day at the White House. The power that the earthly Chief Justice possessed did not prevent him from making a mistake. Chief Justices make mistakes. Commanders-in-Chief make mistakes. Executive officers make mistakes. The ballers and shot callers who pull the levers of power with their hands still have feet of clay. Thus, while we respect those who lead us politically, we as Christians remind all political leaders that they too will come before the Chief Cosmic Justice, who reigns over the heavenly high court. The ultimate Chief Justice goes by many names. El Shaddai, El Elyon, the Ancient of Days, and one day, all flesh, whether we are the head of state at the White House or the head of the family in our house, must give an account of our actions before the celestial Supreme Court. This morning, a few hours before our nation goes to elect its next president, let me share some insights about jurisprudence from the perspective of the heavenly high court, utilizing the life of Israel's second and most prominent king, David. David, the unassuming and nearly overlooked shepherd boy. David, Jesse's son, who was secretly anointed by Samuel to succeed Saul. David, who could play a harp with one hand to soothe Saul and throw a slingshot with the other hand to slay Goliath. David, through ebbs and flows of courage and conniving, trust in God and trickery of people, military might and tender mercy, David rose to be king of his nation. The book of 2 Samuel recounts David's ascent to the peaks of monarchical power, first as the king of Judah and then over all Israel. In his pilgrimage to power, there was more intrigue and conspiracy, backroom politics and backstories than any episode of the show Scandal on ABC. David deals with challenges from Saul's children and the civil war that results from it. He defeats the Philistines and brings the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. While a mighty warrior in battle, David lost a decisive battle to that foe that has failed many a leader. Lust. Lust, that ancient enemy, lured David into an ambush when he caught a glimpse of Bathsheba bathing on her back. And before it was over, the king of the nation had impregnated Bathsheba and launched a plot to kill her husband Uriah. David's misdeeds over the house of Uriah and Bathsheba unleashed a cycle of misfortune in David's own house. David's son Amnon rapes David's daughter Tamar. Another son, Absalom, rebels against David, creating another civil war which he had to put down even in the midst of ongoing wars with the Philistines. When we come to our text in 2 Samuel 23, King David is near the end of his life, and he offers a farewell political speech and a kind of last will and testament. As we assess the words and actions of this aging political leader, we learn today three important truths that should guide our engagement with politics and the powers that be. Number one, God's justice seeks restoration, not revenge. Fairness, not favoritism. Life, not death. Many models of justice in our world are based on revenge, favoritism, and death. On the one hand, our justice system often locks in prison people even when there is reasonable doubt about their guilt. On the other hand, this same system grants get-out-of-jail-free cards to the well-to-do and the well-connected. It sometimes seems that the bigger your paycheck is, the larger your chance for parole and pardon. In the parade section of this Sunday's newspaper, there is an article about what the next president should do. Jeffrey Cameron, a noted social activist and president of Harlem's Children's Zone, talks in that article about the need to extend the cradle through college syndrome that exists in middle-class communities and wealthy communities, to extend the cradle through college syndrome, where young people in middle-class and well-to-do communities receive whatever they need, whenever they need it to go higher, whether it's a pair of glasses or help with housing. This is in stark contrast to what activists know, and many people suffering in these communities know, is the cradle to prison syndrome that exists in many poor and brown and black communities. The cradle to prison syndrome exists in large measure because notions of justice are running afoul in those communities. And I mean real justice, genuine justice, the kind of justice that a loving God dispenses. Many notions of justice in underserved communities are rooted not in impartiality, but in stark partiality. Supposedly, Lady Justice has blinders on to prevent her from playing favorites. But often when it comes to justice, for those who are not well connected, she sees with 20/20 vision. How else can he explain the new Jim Crow of disproportionate mass incarceration of brown and black people in this country? But I've come to tell you today, there is no favoritism in God's Supreme Court. Make sure as you go to vote for whoever you vote, that you realize that presidents and paupers all must give an account before God. The NRSV's translation of 2 Samuel 23:1 is perhaps misleading. Listen to that translation. Now these are the last words of David, the oracle of David, son of Jesse, the oracle of the man whom God exalted, the anointed of the God of Jacob. And here's the operative line: the favorite of the strong one of Israel. The favorite of the strong one of Israel. More accurately, the Hebrew identifies David as the sweetness of Israel's song. In other words, you can translate that perhaps more aptly, not the favorite of the strong one of Israel, but David is the sweetness of Israel's song. In other words, David is beloved by God, not because David is better than anybody else. David is beloved by God when he sings songs that attest to God's power. Instead of singing narrow, nationalistic songs like God Bless America, truly righteous politicians only realize that God's got the whole world in God's hands. When will we learn that God is not limited by our petty partisan politics? When will we learn that God is not circumscribed by our national boundary? When will we learn that our God is not impressed with our patriotic flag waving and chest pumping? God has not forgotten the unaddressed injustices and the unacknowledged atrocities, visited by the powerful upon the powerless. On our way to the ballot box, for whomever we vote, at whatever level, we need to remind politicians that what is done in the dark will eventually come out in the light. Therefore, rather than arrogantly thumping our chest and talking about America being an exceptional nation, American political leaders should regularly fall on their knees and pray, Lord, have mercy on us for the injustice that our country has visited against others. From Native American reservations in the American West to the shores of West Africa, to the gang-riddled streets of West Baltimore, from the poverty-stricken streets on Chicago's South Side to the poverty-stricken rice fields in South Asia. Having received in God your grace and your mercy as a nation, now grant us courage to fix what is broken and to build up what is torn down. That ought to be the stump speech of every American politician. President Obama, Governor Romney, whoever wins, know that a truly impartial God is watching to see if you are really interested in justice. The second truth: we need political leaders who emphasize righteous deeds, not empty creeds. Political leaders who emphasize righteous deeds, not empty creeds. In a world full of serious problems, empty political rhetoric should no longer be tolerated. And it is only tolerated because we tolerate it. With the authority vested in believers by the heavenly Supreme Court, we should declare to all political leaders that unfulfilled campaign promises for justice and fairness will equal unemployed politicians. As the King of Israel, in this text and across his life, King David said the right things, but occasionally he did not do the right thing. He implied in 2 Samuel 23:5 that his administration had been one of justice. Justice. If Bathsheba or her murdered husband Uriah were to testify before the heavenly Supreme Court, would King David be declared innocent? Or would he be indicted and convicted for crimes against humanity? Instead of worrying about how people will remember them, godly politicians focus on who has been forgotten and forsaken. In order to implement God's justice, the theologian Lenny Russell suggested that we ask this question: who's missing? Yeah. That's the question that will always be asked at the open church. Who's missing? Politicians who truly fear God regularly ask, who is left out of the proposal or policy for better health care, safer schools, and more jobs? Who's missing? That is why, with priestly care before beginning this sermon, I pulled out a chair and placed in the chair a name card. And the name card, and maybe it should always be at the communion table, simply says, Justin Case. As people of God, there's always a name card on a spare chair for Justin Case. No matter how saved and sanctified we may think we are, we always make room. I wish I had a praying church. Just in case, in our arrogance, we overlook someone. Just in case of our piety, we overlook someone. Just in case of our narrow nationalistic viewpoint, we overlook someone. There's always room at this table. Because we ask the fundamental question of just politics, who's furthermore, in 2 Samuel 23:5, we should consider the prominence of the first person singular references in David's words. Notice in verse 5 how often you see the words mine and me. Is not my house like this with God? For God has made with me an everlasting covenant. Will God not cause to prosper all my help, my desire? King David should have used more plural pronouns, like our and us. Leaders concerned about justice seek to be less self-centered and more people-centered. The biblical scholar Oprah Hendricks, in his classic work, must reading for members of the open church, the work is entitled The Politics of Jesus. Professor Hendricks insists that leaders at every level must treat the people's needs as holy. He writes, and I quote, in this sacred service of treating the people's needs as holy, there is no allegiance to Democrat or to Republican. Rather, our allegiance must be to making sure that every child has enough to eat, that old folks can live their last days with security and freedom from anxiety. Our allegiance must be to crafting policies with our neighbors in mind, to listening and contemplating the people's challenges and needs with prayer and humility. Thanks be to God, if we take seriously a justice that's concerned about righteous deeds and not empty greeds, it then can move us to the hopeful possibilities of this third point. A commitment to restorative justice expands the parameters of what is possible. A commitment to restorative justice expands the parameters of what is possible. I challenge some of David's words as a way of demonstrating that we are to hold all political leaders accountable, whether kings or queens, presidents or prime ministers, mayors or magistrates. But in verse 3, let me give the king a great and give him some props. He begins to move finally in the right direction by conceiving imaginative, hope-filled possibilities. Listen at the king in some of his final words. The God of Israel has spoken. The rock of Israel has said to me, the one who rules over people justly, ruling in the fear of God, is like the light of the morning, like the sun rising on a cloudless morning, gleaming from the rain on the grassy ground. It has been said that politics is the art of the possible. Whenever God, the heavenly Chief Justice, is on our side, even the impossible becomes possible. The midnight of fear becomes the sunrise of faith. The horizon of hope is no longer cluttered by clouds of confusion. Gracious words replace the toxic words that pollute our political environment. Green jobs reduce the toxic waste that contaminates our natural environment. When we are committed to bringing forth justice, I mean a justice that moves beyond low-minded, petty, red state, blue state politics. I mean, if we are really committed to justice, then we can sing in the words of Sheila Coleman, believe in the morning. Believe in the God of miracles. Believe in the God who is more powerful than any disappointment, any night, any end of day. As sure as there is life on earth, morning, she says, always comes. Indeed, if I had some believing saints, somebody would know that morning is breaking right now. Somewhere, when politicians and those whom they serve are committed to restoring justice, the ultimate Supreme Court will overturn demonic decisions made in lower courts, decisions that have incarcerated the bright possibilities of a blessed new morning as we cast our votes, as we protest and march, as we organize and strategize. We are not depending on Democrats, but rather on our divine deliverer. We are not resting our hopes on Republicans, but rather on a righteous Redeemer. I know my Redeemer lives, and because my Redeemer lives, justice will come, morning will work, because our Redeemer lives. Morning has broken already. Somewhere, as this sermon began at a presidential inauguration, it too will conclude at a presidential inauguration. During his inauguration on January 20, 1993, President Bill Clinton invited Maya Angelou, poet extraordinaire, to recite a poem. As the poet who taught us why caged birds can still sing, Maya Angelou realized the cosmic possibilities of morning always extend beyond the dry language of public policy. As powerful as politicians are, we still need prophetic poets to envision the higher possibilities that the heavenly high court has. Maya Angelou rightly entitled her poem On the Cross of the Morning. Lift up your faces. You have a piercing need for this bright morning dawning for you. History, despite its raging pain, cannot be unlived, and if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes above the day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Here, on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look out into your sister's eyes, into your brother's face, your country, and say, simply, very simply, with hope, good morning. Politicians may come and go, but prophetic poets must always remind us of the morning in cities and suburbs, on fields and farms. Good morning. Weekends may endure for the night, but joy comes. Good morning. To the storm changes can come through, knocking out power and claiming life, and yet with courage and dignity, we hold our backs and say, good morning. The clouds are scattered. The fog is lifted. Look on the horizon. There is the bright and morning star. I can say, you can say, we must say, good morning. Don't get so tied up in watching Josh sing on TV. Move around and let go of hope. Do not dismay. Whatever the time, your pastor came to tell you, good morning. I cannot come happen on Tuesday night. I cannot do 6,270 electoral votes. The poet, the prophet said, good morning. I know it's a good morning. Because if the devil has wanted to stop good mornings, he should have done a better job on Good Friday. He failed on Good Friday. I can now say to you, good morning. Early Sunday morning. While the news was still on the road. Because of that morning, I can now say, good morning. Politics at the local level, the celestial Supreme Court told me to tell you